right, they're popping in now, so I'm gonna give people an opportunity to get logged in real quick.
How many do we have so far? Any idea?
We had almost 40 registered. Like I said, they're trickling in now. This is kind of what happens. So well, if you're logging in, folks, give us just a couple of minutes. I want to give you all an opportunity to get logged in before we start the program. But we'll get started here in the next couple of minutes. I'll tell you what, for time's sake, we're just going to start. And then that way we maintain that hour at least as close to it as we can. My name is Josh Sugar. I'm the Director of Membership and Business Relations for the Chamber. Welcome to our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. Today, we're going to talk about disparities, and I'm not going to say anything more than that because I want the panelists and the moderators to do their part. But I do want to take a minute and thank our sponsors. I want to start with our title sponsor, Independence Bank, and offer Louis Straub an opportunity to say hello on behalf of Independence.
Thank you very much, Josh. Independence Bank is very proud to be a sponsor of this series. I happened to go on the glide trip this past year, and it was very, very impactful to have so many community leaders examining and re-examining the problems of racism in our community and how we can become one better city together with all of us working together. So when Josh and I got together and talked about this opportunity, I could not be more happy, pleased, and our bank could not be more proud to be the sponsor of this series to help the healing in our community. Independence Bank is the 5th largest Kentucky-based bank in Kentucky. We have assets over $3 billion. We opened up our location here in Louisville about 2.5 years ago, right in the heart of St. Matthews at Shelbyville Road and Chenoweth Lane. Since that time, when we moved in, there were 39 banks in Louisville, and we were 39th place in market position. And because of the great work of our team and the way St. Matthews, the Louisville community has embraced us, we've now moved up to 23rd place in market position. So I would like to thank everybody in Louisville and thank my team for all the hard work that they've done. And we look so forward to helping the city of St. Matthews and helping the greater community of Louisville. So thank you, Josh, for that moment.
Thank you, Louis. Appreciate that. The supporting sponsor of this series is Leadership Louisville. Our bronze sponsors are the Free Coat Exchange, MMN Consulting, and Spectrum Reach. And then our community champion partners, Randy Frank Consulting and Webster University. A couple of things about today. So here in a couple of minutes, I'm going to hand this off to Christy and Louis. They're going to lead a 20-minute moderated discussion with our panelists. After that, we will have a question and answer session. So if you do have questions, please drop those in the questions section and we will monitor those and then ask them as time allows. With that, I'm going to hand this off to Christy Smallwood with Eagle Eye Strategies and Louis Straub with Independence Bank, who will run the discussion.
Thanks, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists that we're going to be able to hear from here almost immediately. And I wanted to give everybody a heads up. If you did not get to see the pre-event video where I got to have a short conversation with Kendall, that we discussed what's the definition between a difference and a disparity. So the conversation is wrapped around disparities today. And the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is it's not just that it's a hot topic, it's important for us to continue to go deeper into these conversations so that we understand and can do better with our own lives and our own communities and our own businesses and how we show up intentionally. And I loved the analogy, Kendall, that you shared about the ball game, just taking the whole fence down so that everybody has that same access, that we can celebrate our differences that create the vibrant community. But we know we don't celebrate disparities. We're addressing those and we're breaking those down. And so I loved that difference. And I would love to, at this point, I want to introduce all of our panelists. We have Kendall Boyd with Louisville Metro Government, Nachand Trabue with Bates Community, and Bridgette Johnson with New Directions. I would love for each of you to take the spotlight and to kind of share your background and your thoughts about the definition of that disparity. Who wants to go first? How about one of the ladies? Bridgette, would you like to go first? Unmute.
Yes, I can go first, Christy. Thank you. My name is Bridgette Johnson. Hello, Louis. Nice to see you. I am the COO for New Directions Housing Corporation. I've been in my position for 5 years as COO, but I've been with New Directions for 17 years, right? So we talk about disparities, right? I started with New Directions as an administrative assistant, and through hard work and partnerships, I was able to be promoted up to my current position of COO. A little bit about New Directions, Christy, right? We've been in the business for 50 years. We were born out of the social movement back in the 1960s around the housing issue. Still today, we truly concentrate on affordable housing, 913 units, along with wonderful programs, home ownership preservation, repair fair, and our lovely IRA. Overcome disparities, as we talked about, and lead them to economic mobility, right? So when I think about disparities, I think about the barriers, right, that individuals have, right? And those barriers / disparities truly disincentivize, right, and demotivate individuals to overcome those barriers / disparities. So in my definition, when I think about disparities, it isn't something that we celebrate. It's something that truly causes hardship for individuals who are trying to overcome.
Absolutely. Nachand?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Nachand Trabue. I'm the Executive Director of Bates Community Development Corporation. We're located in Smoketown. And I wear a couple of different hats. I'm also a entrepreneur in Smoketown. I own my own business called Manhattan on Broadway. So I'm going to come to you from 2 different points on disparity. At Bates Community Development Corporation, we have been here and existing for many, many years. We've been in the community for 100+ years. And the Community Development Corporation has been here for 25 years. Our whole goal is to enhance the quality of urban life. So one of the components, we are in a food desert, and one of our biggest, which is a disparity in the barrier, is that, we don't have food access. So we have created a Healthy Hearts, Healthy Meal nutritional program. As we speak right now, we are out planting in our garden. We have a garden now. It's so important for us to give the community what the community does not have. There's no stores. Well, we go and we grow the food. We show people how to grow food. We show them how to cook with the healthy food. So we are breaking down the barriers by helping them to learn how to make this turn a bad situation into something positive. And that's one of our biggest goals here in Smoketown, considering we don't have a stores that we could go walk to, go, and we have a few stores, but they're not the stores that where we could go get fresh produce. So we are fighting every day in order to make sure that our community has what it needs. On the entrepreneur side, on the event space, I'm from Smoketown, I'm a 4th generation, so I'm just invested in this community, and I put my business here 7 years ago. I did that intentionally. I wanted to help with revitalization, and also I wanted younger people in my community who know me to look up and say, hey, if she could do it, I could do it. Right now, what we're facing and dealing with disparity is, since the pandemic and civil unrest and everything that was going on last year, I said, let me convert my venue into a Black marketplace to help Black small businesses who had to close their doors, Black small businesses who are no longer able to, who lost income and who weren't able to get loans and weren't able to get help. I said, you know what, let me help. So we now have a every weekend, a Black marketplace where people come and shop, buy, and encourage from Black-owned businesses here in Louisville, Kentucky. We are the first and one of Louisville's premier Black marketplace, and we're excited about what we're doing because we're breaking down the barriers. We're saying, yes, it's an issue. Yes, we know it is. We're not waiting for people to help us. We're going to try to help ourselves the best that we can. Is it hard? Yes, it's very hard, but we're trying every day to, get help and resources to help us so we can continue to do the work that we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Nachand, thank you. Kendall, you're up.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to the Chamber for this opportunity to come and speak with you all today. Just to sort of reiterate what Nay and Bridgette have already said, I'm a lawyer by trade. So I've studied like civil rights law and discrimination law. And when someone says disparities, the first thing that kind of jumps into my mind is disparate treatment and disparate impact, which are legal terms around intentional discrimination against a person because of their biological makeup. And so when you think of disparities, think of someone who's treated differently just simply because of the way they look or what their gender is, right? And there's been times through Louisville history, through Kentucky history, through American history, in which that disparity was either intentional or unintentional. And as we get into the discussion today, we'll see, the differences between unintentional disparities versus, intentional disparities that were created by de jure and de facto, discrimination and segregation. But my name is Kendall Boyd. I am the Chief Equity Officer for Louisville Metro Government. Like I said, I'm a lawyer by trade. Prior to being the Chief Equity Officer, I was the Executive Director of the Louisville Metro Human Relations Commission, which is the commission charged with investigating discrimination claims in housing and in employment here in Louisville, Kentucky. So I've been in this work for a very long time. The reason I think it's important for Louisville Metro government to sort of take on this equity charge and to address these disparities that we see in our community is that government has had a role in creating some of these disparities. A lot of people on here may have heard about the history of things like redlining. I just mentioned, de jure and de facto segregation, things like that. That was law at one point in time in our community. And so in order to undo those changes, Louisville Metro government has to be very intentional about addressing those inequities and reversing those inequities to ensure that everybody in our community is able to thrive. So I'm looking forward to a great discussion today, and I appreciate being on this panel.
Well, we thank each and every one of you. You guys, each of our panelists have always been, we brainstorm ahead of time, but when we have those initial conversations and you guys agree to do these, we are very thankful because as the Chamber of St. Matthews, we have a lot to learn and we're here to do that. And not only that, but to learn and to do better. So as we're learning, we want to find ways in which we can implement to be able to do better. A little quick housekeeping for those that are participating in the webinar. If you have a question for one of our panelists, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit those questions as you're thinking about them. And I also recommend have a notepad next to you so that you can take notes as we go deeper into this conversation. Because I'm totally ready. I've already started taking some notes here anyway. So with our first official real deep question, it's, and Kendall, you and I touched on this in the pre-video a little bit. What are the key areas, since we're small business mostly that are here on the call, what are key areas that equity disparities within an organization show up? So what areas do they show up in and how can we be aware of those?
Sure. Depending on an organization size, you can have a small business with maybe 1 or 2 employees, or you can be a huge business like Louisville Metro and have over 5,000 employees. What I tell people to be mindful of is, one, accessibility to the goods and services that you offer. And what I mean by that is, we live in a digital age now. For example, the COVID shot, you can get signed up for the COVID shot via internet and email and things like that. But you have to be mindful of what are those people who don't have the digital access to be able to sign up for your product or service, right? I know like a lot of appointments are done via the internet, via email. A lot of payments are done, through different types of currency now. But when you engage in this sort of digital world, you exclude certain groups because of this digital divide that we have in our community, especially west of 9th Street. Another accessibility problem is you don't offer the product or service in particular areas of town. So if you want someone to frequent your business, you may live 5-10 miles away, and someone who wants to utilize your product or service doesn't have accessibility to it. Even a person that may want to come work for you. So that's a prime example. Another prime example is hiring, promotion, training, and leadership within inside the organization. Those are huge disparities. What we've done here at Louisville Metro Government is we've taken an audit and a look at the makeup of our various agencies, and we're seeing the demographics of those agencies, and we're seeing what are those barriers that are keeping, you know, our minority employees, our women employees, our LGBT employees, what are keeping them, you know, sort of locked in these positions where they can't get promoted or they can't get trained upwards to get promoted, or what are even some of the barriers to hiring? You know, that's a big key for a lot of organizations. So those are some of the ones that kind of jump off off the top of my head. But, you know, if you look anywhere inside an organization, if you look deep enough, you can find disparities, and you have to be very intentional about addressing those disparities.
And ladies, as you have input, please, this is now that bounce and popcorn time for each of the panelists.
Well, I totally agree with Kendall, right? Digital inclusion, accessibility are essential. I also think about disparities when I think about background checks, right? And credentials. And also with the non-standard work hours or time off policies, right? So all of those things, if you're coming from a extremely low to moderate low income, right? You have all of these disparities, right? These health equities that happen to you because of that circumstance. But during the hiring process or during the background check, these disparities show up. And if we are not intentional about understanding these items, then again, you're excluding an individual because of your lack of intentionality on being inclusive, right? So I think truly understanding, as Kendall stated, our hiring process, who's making the decisions, what frame of reference are we making the decisions from? And when you look at a background check, are you looking at a background check through your past experiences or past life, or through a disparity that an individual may have overcome in order to be sitting in front of you?
And I would ditto what Bridgette and Kendall said too as well, because before I came in this position and then opened up my own event space, I worked at Corporate America LG&E for 20 plus years. So, you know, seeing the corporate aspect of it and also small business NAM aspect of it, one of the things I tell people is also think about the access, where things may be easy or more accessible for you to have, may not be accessible for someone who looks like me to have. As simple as I was a single mom. And when I say single mom, I mean, in my home, I was a single mom. My kids had a wonderful father, but I was a single mom in my home. So that means I was responsible all the time, making sure, you know, picking up from daycare and picking up from this. So accessibility is hiring people and understanding their needs may be different from other people. They might not have a nanny at home to be able to, you know, help them, or a next door neighbor who's going to watch them. They may have to drive or walk or catch a bus to drop their kids off. That's a real valid point, because I walked in those shoes. So I'm able to speak on that. That is, you know, it's having the access to have the things that seem normal for everyone else may not be normal for us, but does it mean that we're not, you know, the best person for those positions? You know, we're still the best person for those positions, but you may have to say, okay, look in different lenses. That's why I tell people, look in a different lens, because I could be, you know, all that you want me to be, and I could perform the work, but it may be a different way. It may be a different time. Maybe your hours are 8 to 5. I maybe can't do 8 to 5, but I can come in from 10 to 7. I'm gonna give 150%. You know, so just different things that I think we need to look at in small business and corporate America too, as well, when we think about people joining our teams.
Yes. I agree. I just want to add as well, when we think about people joining our team. So myself, right? So I've, you know, gained the credentials, you know, graduated from U of L with my MBA. I'm now in a Harvard leadership program, right? But my true passion is making sure I pay it forward, right? So individuals that I may hire at New Directions may not have those credentials, right? But how do I take that person and help them overcome their disparities and make their dreams come true, right? So it's not holding it's not holding everyone to a certain level, but truly looking at an individual, right? And understanding their plight, right? Like, how do they get where they are in a current situation? I remember when I started my MBA, and someone told me, like Nachand, right? Raised my children in a single household with wonderful dads, but not in the same household. They was like, you have a PhD of life, right? And absolutely, right? We do, a lot of us do. But understanding that we may not have the exact same credentials as other individuals, but we still do, or they may still bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, one of the things we don't really talk about in these spaces is leadership around this. If you don't have direct buy-in from leadership, then there's no point in even doing it. I mean, sure, they sound nice. You do a sound bite, hey, we're committed to equity, we're committed to inclusion, and then that's it. It's on paper, but it's not an action. So if leadership doesn't commit to that, then don't waste your time saying that you're committed to equity, because you're not. You've got to be very intentional, as everybody has said already. And then another thing I want people to think about too is, I understand we're coming out of an economic crisis because of a pandemic and things like that, but pay equity is super, super important. The reason I say that is, for example, Bridgette just talked about getting her MBA. College is expensive. MBAs are super expensive. Professional degrees are way too expensive, right? Like I said, me graduating with a law degree, I had to accumulate a lot of debt. And so when I go work for an organization, if I tell the organization, I'm sorry, I can't work for you because I can't afford to, it's not that I can't do the job. It's just, I can't do the job and still put food on my table because I've got $900 a month coming out for student loans, right? In addition to finding a place to live and having transportation and shirt and tie, even if I shop at Kohl's, I can't afford it. And so I want people to think about that. I mean, I know small business, for example, you don't have the economics to really pay a lot of people a lot of money, but also be aware too that just because you offer someone a job with what you think is decent money, the average Black graduate in Louisville, Kentucky makes roughly $10,000 less than their white counterpart who also has a college degree or professional degree. So keep that in mind too as we move forward.
As we go through this conversation, I want us to think about disparities, not only about disparities where we live, but the challenges that people have. I want to share with you a story about how I realize every day I'm still very naive. I've had the pleasure of growing up here all my life, and I've been blessed to be involved with a lot of organizations and lead some different community efforts. And I have been in the West End probably over 1,000 times in my life. So I'm naive, and I thought a lot of other people were the same way. So on the glide trip, we go on the glide trip, and the very first day from the dais, a question is asked. And the question is asked, how many of you in this audience, about 125 of us, how many of you are from Louisville? And as usual, about 50 to 60% of the hands go up. That's what I normally see in Louisville. It's about over half are born and raised here. When you're in Atlanta or Boston or Washington, it's only 10% of the people are born and raised there. So then the question was asked. Now, the audience too is probably about 80% white that's in the audience, okay? Then the question is asked, how many of you, this is the first time that you've been west of 9th Street? This is the first time you've been west of 9th Street. About 80% of the white hands went up. That was my realization of being naive once again. It talks to me, it really opened up the fact of how segregated and segmented we are in this community. And with that, I hope we take away from the conversation today understanding and empathy for each other more. And, I look at the disparities we have, and I don't think people understand how hard it is just for transportation. You have to take a bus every day. Bridgette and I, our children have grown up together in public schools, and to see, it doesn't matter from what part of town you are. when with the magnet schools that we have, and you have parents that want to attend a PTA event, or a child that wants to attend a PTA event at 7 o'clock at night, and the transportation issue you have to have, where you have to change bus routes just a couple times just to get there, and it causes people not being able to be active in their children's lives. So there are disparities more than just what we're talking about here today. I mean, life can be very, very difficult. So I hope we can expand upon that and talk a little bit more about that, just other than the workplace and the differences because of the color of our skin. It's the issues that we have in trying to bring equity to all of us. So
brings us to one of our next questions, though, is about what are some great examples within Louisville that we aren't paying attention to that we need to know about?
Well, I could say that just from working with a lot of small businesses right now, you got 24, Louisville's composed of 24% of Black population. You have 2.4% that are Black-owned small business owners, which means we need about 10 times as more Black-owned businesses. But what of our barriers and disparities is around? The biggest thing is the wealth gap. You know, the numbers on the wealth gap here for small businesses, and then just the wealth gap period, the number is, you know, is just so large compared, which makes it very hard. One of our things is having access to capital. You know, we can't get the resources and not able to get the capital, you know, just different things that's needed for small businesses. And I'm speaking of Black-owned business to be able to think about thriving. We're just trying to think about it. I mean, we got the plan, we got the business plan, we got the idea, we have everything we need. It's just everything behind it because of the barriers that we face every day around trying to be the successful business owner. It's a lot of challenges. And I work with hundreds of small business owners through my marketplace, and I just keep trying to encourage them, y'all, it's going to be a brighter day, you know, just trying to give them a hope of encouragement. But the reality is it's hard. It's hard to get across the barriers. And I'm fighting every day for small businesses.
Yeah, I think for me, to piggyback on what Nate just said, you know, access to capital is big for a young entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur. To add on top of that, a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs don't have the education to understand how to be a successful business owner. You know, business ownership is hard enough already, but if you don't have the tools and the capacity to be able to run your business, you know, efficiently and effectively, that still puts you at a disadvantage. That's why, you know, minority businesses go out of business a lot quicker than white businesses do. It's just a reality. I appreciate Louis, what he said here just a minute ago. He and I are working with this downtown revitalization. And when we talk about community disparities, something as simple as being able to utilize a business downtown without being judged by the way you look or by the way you're dressed. I mean, that's basic, right? You know, if we want to move on beyond what we saw last summer with boards on the buildings and the violence that we see in our community, something as basic as going out to have a bite to eat with your family or your friends, or experiencing the urbanism thing, or experiencing what downtown really has to offer, we have to take off those basic barriers. I mean, if I don't want to go out downtown because I'm afraid I'm going to be turned away because I have a shirt on that's past my hips or whatever, that's ridiculous. And that's what creates these disparities in our community. Now, I understand dress codes and things like that. I get that. But think about the dress code that you implement has a disparate impact on different people. The way, you know, for example, like a hat. A hat is a fashion accessory for a lot of people. Well, we don't allow hats. Well, come on. I mean, it complements the outfit. A lot of ladies wear hats. A lot of men wear hats. That's basic, right? Let's get beyond that. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of what's happening. And then also workforce development for ex-offenders is a big, big thing, not only in Louisville, but in Kentucky, right? Kentucky law has a lot of rules around certifications and licenses for certain businesses or certain professions, excuse me. And if you are an ex-offender, you can't get those certifications, even if you go to school and study for it. So, you know, as we develop the workforce and we get rid of these barriers to reentry, that's how we prevent recidivism. That's how we prevent violence in our community. That's how we prevent someone from offending again, is by giving them the opportunity to get that $10, $15, $20 an hour job, to go through the apprenticeship program, to go work for a small business to make their life better.
Absolutely. So I piggyback on both Nachand and Kendall, right? When it's, you know, segregation. So New Directions does housing for affordable housing, right? So right there's a disparity. How do you define affordable housing, right? Because some individuals may say, well, you know, if you're at 80% AMI, we're providing affordable housing. But if you have an individual that is a 0 to 30% AMI, 80% is not affordable housing, right? So how do we define or redefine what is affordable housing? At the same time, right, we talked about Louisville, heavily segregated. New Directions does predominantly over 70% of the housing we provide is in the west end of Louisville, right? With an average income for a Black woman, right? 90% of our residents are Black. She's a woman with a couple of children with an income of less than $10,000, right? Absolutely, right? So we have and we work every day in trying to help individuals remove barriers, right? To increase their income. But we talked about transportation. Like, how do we help with transportation? Because one of our residents who lives in the west end of Louisville cannot make it to work by 9 o'clock on our TARC system, right? Because they cannot get to childcare and to work by 9 o'clock. It's impossible. We've tried to run every experiment with different agencies on trying to make that happen. That cannot happen, right? So that's dismotivating, right? That's demotivating for residents. So they just sit there. But we do have our iRights program that we're putting in place to try to help that. But it is true, right? We think about insurance, right? Think about insurance for your car. I'll take my car. Insurance for my car may be about $100, 125 something a month, right? I live in 40220 zip code now, right? I did grow up in the West End. If I was to take my same vehicle, Bridgette, put it down here in a West End zip code, my insurance would probably almost triple.
Yeah.
Right? So guess what? We're just not going to get insurance. Right? And that's true for car insurance. That's true for your home insurance. That's true for even getting a comparable rate for your house, right? Because there's no comps. So your house, if we picked your house up and moved it to the East End from the West End, it would probably almost triple in value. But to go to a bank and say, I have a house that's on 41st in Garland, right? And I need to do a refinance. And that house is now, it's only worth $60,000. So, banking and the systematic, right, barriers that are around that, the disparities that are there in insurance, in transportation, in education. I mean, I can just continuously name the list for especially an area that has been disinvested for so many years, right? But yet, right, it's still thriving. There's still absolutely parts of it that are thriving, and the residents have, figured out a way to make it work, right? But if we really want to attack these disparities and make it easier, right, make it more equitable for residents, we really have to look through the lens of our residents and truly understand their plight, right? Not what the textbooks may say, or not what you may have read somewhere. So I think it's really important that you're frontline and you get on the ground to truly listen to individuals and understand the disparities that are there as we try to make a difference.
Hey, Bridgette, I want to build upon what you said about how the disparity is and how hard it is for housing, especially in the West End. So I was on the board of New Directions for about 8 years. And we would raise money and we would literally build houses in the West End to be affordable. And we would spend $120,000 to build a house. And as soon as we would open it up, turn the key, it's immediately worth $60,000.
Right.
Challenge that we have in this community. And to build an affordable house, housing prices have gone up so much now, you can't build one for 120. It's probably 50 or 160, and it's still only worth $60,000. So it's huge challenges we've got to overcome. I mean, not only economic, but just living. I mean, insurance, that's a prime example. Healthcare, that's another example. The food desert that we talked about before. So hard just to find fresh fruits and vegetables and fresh food to give your family a great, healthy meal. It's hard to do.
Yes, it is.
So for all of our panelists, before we get into the Q&A that's listed here, because we've got a few questions, I want to ask you one specific question to be able to then we'll go over to what everybody has questions for. If you were to give us one thing that we as individuals should be doing on a daily basis to help break down disparities, what is one thing that we can start incorporating now into our lives?
For me, it's intentionality, but when I say intentionality, you've got to utilize what we call the racial equity toolkit. Okay. It seems to be counterintuitive to be intentional about race, right? Because for so long we've preached judge by the content of character, not by the color of the person's skin, which I still believe wholeheartedly in my heart. However, if we're very intentional about utilizing a toolkit, and when I say utilizing this toolkit, we've got to be able to look at visions, outcomes, stakeholders, and accountability. If you're intentional in that, and your workforce is reflective of the community that you live in, if your product or service benefits the whole community, not just certain segments of the community, then you're achieving racial equity. So for me, it's intentionality with the utilization of a toolkit that ensures, again, vision, outcomes, stakeholders, and results-based accountability.
Absolutely. So I totally agree with Kendall. And then I also would like to add that the one thing you can do is engage outside your comfort zone, right? Push yourself, right? Instead of going to Mesh on Brownsboro Road, right? Find a restaurant that's beyond 9th Street and go, right? Or when you take your ride, right, through Louisville, right? Include beyond 9th Street. In that when you're thinking about, enrolling your child in an after-school program, think about how you include diversity in that program, right? Or, for your children. So I think about engaging outside your comfort zone, being intentional about your exposure, because no matter what age, right? If you don't know, you don't know. So, and you cannot know what's going on beyond 9th Street without being a part of it.
Hey, Bridgette, you said go to a couple restaurants. I'm going to recommend a couple right now. There's one called The Table. I invite everybody to Google it, look it up. And there's another one called Love City that has great fish fries and barbecue. I encourage people to look at both of those restaurants, and all of those monies that's made in those restaurants goes to help the neighborhoods around them. So take a look at those two restaurants. I think you'll be encouraged, and you'll have a great meal when you go there.
Absolutely. When you engage, listen, right? Don't go with an agenda. Just go with an openness, right? To listen and learn as you're pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
And I ditto what Bridgette and Louis too as well. You just and Kendall, and you're definitely right. Intentionality, we got to be intentional about it. I have a lot of my people I went to school with, the presentation academy, like, Nachand, how can I help? What can I do? I'm like, first of all, I need you to understand why you're really helping. And I need you to come in our space, come in a space with me. If that means volunteering here at Bates CDC, we're working in a food desert. So does that mean helping us around food disparity, help getting, get in the trenches. I tell them, get in the trenches with us so that you could see. So you won't take it from myself, but you'll be able to live it. You got to live this thing. I tell people all the time, the reason why I get up and do what I do every day is because I'm living it and I'm seeing what's really happening. So that makes me even more intentional every day to continue to fight because I live it every day. And then as what Bridgette was made a very good point on, you have to engage. So you got to engage in this type of work. We're in Smoketown, which is the first African-American community in Louisville, Kentucky. So we service everybody in Smoketown. It's a Black community, as well as West End, which is another Black community. And a lot of them originated in Smoketown and maybe migrated to the West End and vice versa. So we are helping with the disparity around the whole entire unit from Smoketown to West End, but we need people to engage and see what that means to come in that community. We're helping youth right now through our programs through Base Community Corporation. We're giving a lot of our kids, they go to schools and they go to these magnet schools right in our community, but they might not get into the magnet program. So they're not learning about drones and they're not learning about robotics. So what do? We turn around and create the program here and have an after school program so that the kids who live in the community who are right next to these magnet schools, they can't get in for whatever reason that is. We're saying, hey, we're going to create this program right here for you. So find amazing nonprofits like Bay CDC, New Direction, and other ones who are doing great work in the community. A lot of times we see that a lot of people give donations and money every year to the same nonprofits. Look at the other nonprofits that are doing good work and say, you know what, this year we're giving to this particular nonprofit because they got boots on the ground and they're helping a whole different population than what we're used. The ones we're used to helping year after year, change it up. And as well as with shopping, okay, it's great to shop at all those other malls, but some Saturdays come and shop with Black business owners at the marketplace, at my event space. So, those type of things is going to help you to really see something different, to be able to live it and to say you're a part of it, because you can't say you're a part of change until you actually, support is a verb. Support is a verb, guys. So you got to put it to action. So I tell people all the time, we want people to come in our space. We want people to learn and we want people to be a part of it. We want people to help. But in order to do that, we want the people who are real intentional, who really like Bridgette said, come in with a caring heart. It's something that I really want to do because I really want to make an impact. And we need people who are saying, you know what, we care enough that we want to help you all make an impact.
And if I can really quick, Christy, this intentionality, it's not easy. If it was easy, we'd already have, we wouldn't have disparities in our community. We wouldn't have inequities in our community. And so I remind people, it's very hard to be intentional about this work, but think about how hard it is by the people that are impacted by these disparities, how hard they have it. So that puts it in context for you. So it's not easy. For some people, it's baby steps. We're undoing, 200 or 300 years of thought behind this, and it's not going to be easy, but if you're committed to it, we can make it happen.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Christy, can I just add real fast, right? We talked about disparate impact in Louisville, and just to explain the benefit cliff to individuals, right? As we talk about individuals increasing their income, say they're a 0 to 30%er or even a 50%er, and the federal government, I remember the program, pull yourself up by your bootstraps or something like that. That's not true, right? It's not a bootstrap that will pull you up. With the benefit cliff, what happens as individuals who need help, right? Because this could be a poverty cycle, right? That is passed down from generation to generation. So as they're trying to remove their self from this subsidy, right? They hit a benefit cliff where all the assistance that they're receiving goes away. And now all of a sudden they're just stuck with just having to make
now what? Now where do you go from there?
Barely making minimum wage, right? So that is a huge issue, right? So it's very disincentivizing. So, you know, we do have a program. Again, I spoke of it, iRise, that's going to help our residents overcome that benefit cliff. But that's just New Directions residents, right? How many other individuals have to try to overcome, not from having assistance to not having any assistance? And, you know, you're trying to create, you know, a change for your family. So.
Well, I have totally loved all of this conversation so far. I definitely want to make sure we address the questions that are in the box, and I'm pointing like you guys can see my extra screen over here. The additional questions from our group here. So to start off, we have Wanda Shaw. To leverage off Nachand's point from early on, do you think that employers should consider flexible work arrangements to accommodate those who can't work traditional hours?
Oh, yes, I definitely do. And that's why I brought that point up. And thank you, Wanda, for the question. I think it's so important. And it's not like you got to cater to this, but I'm just saying, everything don't have to be traditional. Now's the time to change and do things differently. If you want to talk about diversity and inclusion, look at things differently now. Now's the time to do that. And that means this maybe not be the standard banker hours from 9 to 5. And that's okay. Maybe we have to think about some flex time. Maybe think about telework, and then maybe some telework and maybe some extended hours. Let's get real creative with it, because you got great, smart, brilliant people who are ready to come to the workforce, but they got some barriers that they're facing. And I know that to be true because I work with them every day here through Bates Community Development Corporation.
And I think the pandemic has shown that we have to be flexible, right? We're living in non-traditional times, you know, for lack of a better term. So yes, we have to be, I mean, Louisville Metro is a 24/7 operation, even on major holidays and stuff. So that flexibility is a must in order to attract the best diverse clientele that you can and best diverse employment pool that you can.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we talk about silver linings of COVID, right? I think a silver lining is that we all, right, have learned and must continue to learn how to be creative and innovative in order to get to our end goal. So absolutely, we shall not.
I'm going to shamelessly say the word, Bridgette. I hate to interrupt, but I'm going to shamelessly say it. We've learned how to pivot.
Yes, Christy. Yes,
we have. We are pivoting. Yes.
So here's a really fun question that I would love, and I know that Louis would probably be interested in this one too. What's the most desirable business type that minorities want to have? Retail or service? Like, which one do they seem to gravitate to? Curious.
You said retail or service?
Retail or service were the two options, but I'm also thinking like food service. I would throw restaurants in there too, because.
Nachand, you want to jump on that one since you're in
did you say the best that they would want to work at, or
the most desirable business types that they want to have? So let's talk entrepreneurs for a second.
Thank you, Bridgette. Yeah, I understand. So I'm just going off of what I see every weekend at our marketplace. These guys are so creative. So they making products to sell. They're making body butters. They're making skincare products. They're making candles. They're making vests. They're making headbands that I'm wearing on right now on my head. They're making beads, a necklace. I mean, they're so creative that they're making. So I would say products versus, I would say, because they're retailing them. I would say retail versus the industry of hospitality. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here at Metro, we certify minority, female, disabled-owned business enterprises. Most of those business enterprises are services oriented. I mean, absent someone who makes jewelry or something like that, a lot of restaurant owners, chefs, things like that. Construction workers is a big thing, especially when you're talking about, more male-dominated industries. I say that loosely. We have a lot of minority-owned construction firms that do carpentry, plumbing, electrical work. And that, with this $5 billion capital infrastructure bill that we're seeing coming out of Congress and everything like that, that's going to be a prime opportunity for more minority contractors to be engaged and to make a lot of money doing great work.
Absolutely. So I'll be selfish here, guys, and just say, because I do work at on Maple Street, so I work at 17th. Broadway, right? Having a larger selection of restaurants would be nice, right? And healthier options, right? Would be nice to have in the West End. And we talk about an impact, right? How can we, Lewis talked about like what can be an immediate, some marketing, right? Companies that are in the West End of Louisville, right? Marketing is not inexpensive, right? So, as I talk about, I want somewhere where I can go get a smoothie. I'm sure there's someone beyond mine that has a smoothie that I could drink, but I don't know about it, right? Because I'm not in their circle, right? So offering some marketing for restaurants that are currently beyond Ninth, but at the same time, also giving us, more options.
Yeah.
I may know some people that can help with that.
Okay, Christy.
Yeah. That's a key, what you said.
Let's see.
Marketing is key. Marketing is key, Bridget, what you said.
Yeah.
A lot of these businesses that I work with, small business owners, that's the biggest thing that they need help with is marketing and then development, business development. So, but we're working on those things too, but you're definitely right about that.
And I think marketing goes for any organization that needs more people in to be able to support and serve in that way, regardless. Marketing is key to grow anything.
Yes.
So we have a question from Cynthia for Kendall, and it's going to be matched up. So I'm going to ask like 2 questions in one, Kendall. This one's all yours. Louisville's getting some significant investments coming our way from federal government. Can you address, is there a plan to spend that in a way that helps address equity and inclusion? And then Barbara also asked, how can we change the judicial system to not push felonies? So it's kind of matched in money. And is there anything that's going towards maybe supporting those that have come out of that system?
Yeah, I'll address the judicial part first. That's pretty straightforward. That requires state law changes. We have to go, to Frankfurt to make changes like to sentencing guidelines and things like that. So I urge everybody who's on this, register to vote for one, and challenge candidates for office, especially state office, around these areas around judicial inequities and racial bias in the judicial system. That's how we make those changes. As far as like the federal government expenditure portion, what we did here at Metro was called the Build Back Better Together. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that initiative we did late last summer. We call it B3T. That B3T initiative basically created a number of programs and policies that we would like to see come about as we come through the pandemic and things like that. And part of the budgetary ask from this federal government is going to be part of the B3T work. That B3T work had an equity component built into it. And then on top of that, once we decide on a program or a policy or whatever it is that we're going to do with this money, it's going to require another racial equity toolkit analysis to make sure we cast the widest net. When I think of, like when I talk about the racial equity toolkit, when I do the training, I tell people, think of it as fishing. So side note, I'm a fisherman. So I'm a African-American lawyer in Louisville, Kentucky, who drives a pickup truck and has a bass boat. So, but when I say that is when you think about fishing, you have one rod you can cast out and catch one fish. If you have a net, you can cast out and catch a number of fish. If you long line, like you see the guys on TV, like the sword fishermen, you can have 20 miles of fishing line and pull in a lot more. So the reason I say that is look at the racial equity toolkit as, are you gonna have one rod and reel, a net, or a long line? If you use a long line, you pull in more fish, you have more people engaged, and you have a more of an equitable outcome. If you just cast one, you might catch one, but you got so many other fish out there that are just kind of getting wasted. So yes, to answer the question, we're being very intentional about racial equity and inclusion with the expenditure of these federal dollars. Also understand federal government money always has strings attached to it. You got a limited time you can spend it. There's certain rules on who you can spend it with and how you can spend it. So we do have to work around those, but there is a racial equity lens and component to expending that money.
So I know that we'll let Louis wrap up with a challenge, but I have one last thing that I really appreciate. And let me just address, Pat, your question, can you share how to locate the market on Saturdays? Nachand had to leave early. She would have been the one to address that. Pay attention to the chamber page, because once she has some more information, she's going to share that with us, and we can share that back out with you. So Wanda had one last question about what things can we do to encourage those that are the victims of disparities to not lose hope, to keep going and fighting for the right to be heard? What are things that we can do to help?
I'll take that real quick. We need to see tangible results-based accountability. If we're going to believe in the system to work, we've got to see something that we're benefiting from. And what I mean by that is, I go to school, I put in the work, like, Bridgette said, she started out, as an admin, now she's COO, right? If I'm putting in the work and I'm doing what's asked of me as a responsible citizen, as a responsible adult, I need to see some benefits and tangibility out of that work.
Right.
If I don't see it, then I'm not committed to it. So what's the point in doing it? A lot of my friends on Facebook are always saying, if you don't have a job right now, it's because you don't want to work. Like, well, that's true, but if the federal government's giving you $1,400 a month as compared to making $900 a month, bust and hump every day, what do you think is going to happen, right? And again, I'm not going to get into that debate, but that just kind of highlights what it means. If I'm going to put in the work and I'm committed to doing it, I need to see some results-based accountability from key decision makers and key businesses and leaders in our community to show that this is working.
Absolutely. And I just did Kendall, right? It's about connecting, right? There are a lot of us on the front line currently, right? So you do not have to create a new system. You do not have to create a new club or a new nonprofit. So it's just getting to know Louisville as a whole, and the nonprofits are the individuals that are on the front line and partnering, right? Partnering with them to create what Kendall just spoke of, right? Accountability. Because I can promise you, my residents, I love them to death, right? I couldn't do what I do for over 17 years if it was not for the genuine love that I have for our residents. So just partnering with nonprofits, with individuals who are on the front line and engaging in the tangible results that our residents are able to obtain with just a smile, right? Sometimes they just need to know someone cares, right?
Well, I've got that part saved. So I want to personally thank you guys for being our panelists. It's been a great conversation. I'm going to hand it back over to Louis for some wrapping thoughts, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you guys.
I also want to thank everybody, and I want to thank all the participants on the call. I believe that everyone that's dialed in today wants to learn. They want to make our community better. So I've got a challenge I'd like to extend to everybody on this call. Kendall said, in order to make things better, we have to be intentional. So I'm going to ask everyone on this call to be intentional to change the conversation. If we want Louisville to be better, it's going to take all of us to do it. So when you are out at dinner with your friends or at the cocktail party and somebody's talking about who's better, UK or U of L, basketball or football, change the conversation. Start bringing up the disparities that we have in the community. Start talking about how we can make this community better. That's the only way it'll happen. It's going to have to start small. It's going to have to start with each of us. So I challenge everyone to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. That's a great challenge.
Well, again, I want to take a minute on behalf of the Chamber and our board to thank Nay, Kendall, and Bridgette for your time today, for your insights, for your contributions in our discussion today. Also want to take a minute and thank our title sponsor again, Independence Bank, as well as our supporting sponsor, Leadership Louisville, our bronze sponsors, the Free Code Exchange, MMN Consulting, and Spectrum Reach. And lastly, our community champion sponsors, Randy Frank Consulting and Webster University. We will be back on June 22nd with the third part in this series, and we'll be talking about the urban renewal risk and how redlining impedes the urban renewal. Again, these programs are free, folks, so I'm asking you, when you see these events pop up, please share them. Please encourage people in your own circle to step out of their comfort zone a little bit and join us in these discussions. And I know my coworker dropped earlier the link to our Facebook page for our DEI discussion. If you are not a part of that group, I highly encourage you to do so. We're currently reading one of the books from the first panel, and are kind of talking through that now. And we'd love to have you join that discussion as well. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors. And most importantly, thank you so much to our panelists who gave of their time today. We really appreciate it. Everyone have a great rest of the day.